I cannot rewrite the entire passage for you, but I can help you with some edits. Here's a revised version. I can't say I'm sorry, I admitted reluctantly. Our house has always been open to guests, so when the doorbell rang unexpectedly, we weren't surprised. We were accustomed to welcoming visitors, even when uninvited. As I opened the door, a middle-aged girl stood there, appearing embarrassed. "Good afternoon," she began hesitantly. "I'm looking for Tamara." "Come in, I'll call her," I offered, gesturing for her to enter the hallway. "You'll forgive me," the girl raised her voice as Tamara appeared. "I'm looking for Vera Kolchagina. Perhaps you know her." "Kolchagina?" Tamara pondered. "Yes, well, she was Kolchagina before, but now, maybe not." The girl continued, still flustered. "I traced her to the place where she used to work, still under that surname. I found out that you were friends with her, so I thought." "Sorry, who are you?" Tamara asked, her expression serious. "I'm a relative," the girl responded immediately. "I want to find." "It's been a long time, and I can't remember right away," Tamara said thoughtfully. "I know several Veras. Leave your phone number, and if I find the Vera you're looking for among my acquaintances, I'll pass on your contact details." The girl quickly wrote her name, Alevtina, and her phone number in a small notebook, thanked us repeatedly, and left. "That's Verka, who is married to Vasily," I mentioned as Tamara, and I returned to the hallway. "Ah," Tamara replied briefly, searching through her contacts on her phone. "Why did you make it seem like you didn't know Vera?" I asked, perplexed. "You could have just said that you know her." "No chance. Who knows what the girl wanted and why she was looking for Vera?" Tamara answered confidently. "I'll pass on the contacts, and they can figure it out themselves." Over the following weeks, I couldn't shake off the incident from my mind. I kept asking Tamara if she had contacted Vera or learned anything about Alevtina. However, my interest gradually waned, and the situation faded from memory, until the day we received an invitation to Vera's anniversary celebration. The anniversary was planned at Vera's dacha, which surprised me. She had always considered herself an urban lady, favoring civilized celebrations at restaurants or at home. Nevertheless, a dacha could be a change in her preferences. We didn't see each other frequently anymore, only on special occasions and holidays, so perhaps her views had evolved since our last meeting. Another surprise awaited me at the celebration. There were fewer guests than usual. Vera liked to celebrate on a grand scale, but this time it was different. It was just me, Tamara, and two unfamiliar couples around our age who turned out to be her cottage neighbors. It felt odd that none of Vera's relatives, including her husband and children, were present. The atmosphere was not cheerful, and it seemed like Vera wanted the occasion to end quickly. Sensing the somber mood, the neighbors promptly left, leaving only the three of us at the table in the garden. Observing Vera's demeanor, I thought it might be best to leave her alone, but then she began to reveal a different side of herself. She dropped her usual facade and opened up about her life, sharing stories filled with long-hidden family secrets. I'm 70 years old now, and what do I have to show for it? I thought I was living the right way, keeping secrets and not intentionally harming anyone. Vera confessed, her tone filled with regret. I believed that by starting fresh when I met Vasia and got married, my dull past would be forgotten. That's where I thought my life began. When I met Vasia, I was already 30 years old. I was working as a foreman at the factory and had my own small room. It seemed like I had my whole life ahead of me. We got married because it was time, not because of love. Nobody asked me, but Vasia did. He was a handyman, and marrying him seemed practical. Did we live happily ever after? Well, everyone has their own definition of happiness, right? We had an apartment, a garage, and we changed cars a few times throughout our lives. We weren't rich, but we didn't need to be. However, I never experienced what they show on TV or what my friends talked about, true female happiness. But despite any internal struggles, I never let my true emotions show in public. Now, looking back, I realized that while I was busy creating an image of a happy and prosperous life, I neglected my children. While I was convincing everyone that my son, Vitalka, was working up north, he was actually serving time in prison. He made some foolish decisions and ended up involved in a robbery. After serving his time, he returned, but he had no interest in working. I had to make up stories about him going up north again, even traveling to deliver packages to him in different regions. When he went up north for the third time, I told him that I would no longer be there for him, and I wouldn't bring him any more packages. I made it clear that he could come back home if he found a job after serving his sentence. It didn't matter what kind of job it was. He could even be a street sweeper. But now he's 38, and most of his life has been spent in camps. He has no family or children. However, during his last day in jail, he started corresponding with a girl named Olga. I know very little about her, except that she has 3 children. Vitalka moved in with her, and he calls from time to time to say that he's still free. It's been 5 years already. I thought that at least my youngest son, Igor, would learn from his brother's mistakes, but it didn't turn out that way. Thankfully, he has never been to jail. He went to school and found a job. However, his personal life is another story. He got married, had a daughter, and divorced 2 years later. He stuck to his guns and insisted that his daughter wasn't his. I barely managed to convince his ex-wife not to seek alimony, and I've been providing financial support myself. I thought, why should I take money from my son? If it didn't work out the first time, let him start a new family. So I took care of my granddaughter's expenses. But then Igor got married again, and his new wife became pregnant. However, he left her for someone else. I called him, invited him to visit his wife, and tried to impart some wisdom, but it was futile. His wife ended up giving birth alone and filed for divorce and alimony. I can't afford to support a second granddaughter financially. So my youngest son now has a low-paying job to minimize his alimony payments. He hasn't married officially, but he lives with his current partner and even had a child with her. Everything seemed fine, but there are always other girls coming and going. They're all pretty and in their 30s, claiming to be pregnant with Igor's child. I call them, invite them to visit, but it's pointless. At some point, I thought, they're grown-up sons. Let them figure out life on their own. Let them do what they want and take responsibility for their actions. I didn't teach them to rob or impregnate girls, did I? No, I didn't. I had one joy left, Vasia. I looked at him over the years and realized that it was good that I married him, even if I didn't love him. He loved me throughout our lives. Now, both of us are retired, living in our apartment, and it feels like we're just passing time. We have petty arguments, but nothing serious. I thought that at least in my old age, I would have a stable life. There's no rush, nothing to strive for. I've gained what I've gained. But then Alevtina came along, seeking help for her child. I only help my official grandchildren, so to speak. Vasia, being kind-hearted, helps these other girls who claim to be pregnant with our son's children. Not financially, of course, because there isn't enough to go around, but he helps with household chores and provides some support. He still believes in them, the fool. When Toma called me about Alevtina looking for me, Vasia couldn't contain his excitement. He itched and itched for a couple of days until I realized it would be easier to give him Toma's phone number than to convince him that the whole world can't help. I don't know what Vasia said to Alevtina when he met her. We don't report our whereabouts or activities to each other. Less than 2 weeks later, my husband informed me that we would have guests that day. I couldn't have imagined that it had anything to do with Alevtina. As you know, I always prepared the best when guests arrived and made sure I looked presentable. That time was no different. Delicacies were on the table, and I was dressed up. The guests turned out to be 2 women of different ages. Vasia introduced the older one as Katya and the younger one as Alevtina. I wasn't surprised that my husband brought anyone into the house. If he had his way, he would rescue every stray kitten. Since the guests had arrived, I couldn't kick them out, especially since I hadn't invited them. Katya was 50 years old, and Alevtina was her daughter, about to turn 30. The conversation at the table was strained. Vasya tried to fill the awkward silences, nervously pretending to be happy. After an hour, I couldn't bear it any longer and, dropping my hospitable hostess facade, I confronted them. "All right, let's stop the charade," I started firmly. "I don't think this is just a courtesy visit. If you're here, it means you want something. Let's get to the point and finish this gathering." "Vera," Vasya tried to calm me down. "I'm not talking to you," I cut him off. "I have the right to know why I set the table and what this occasion is." The two women remained silent at the table. Perhaps they were modest or hesitant to speak. Vasya once again broke the silence. "Your mother," Katya confidently interrupted my husband, although it was clear that it was difficult for her to say those words. "And Alevtina is your granddaughter," Vasya said with a satisfied smile. I reached a point in my life where I decided to forget about the past. I convinced myself that my life began when I got married, and everything before that didn't matter. I even deliberately blocked out the memory of giving birth to a daughter and the circumstances surrounding it. I put so much effort into appearing strong and believed that the past was simply the past. But now, that past sits at the same table with me, and there's no hiding from it. When I was 19 years old, I met Sergei, a man I thought I was deeply in love with. Despite the significant age difference, I was enamored with him. Coming from a humble rural background, everything in the city where I attended school felt like a miracle. I didn't have enough money for my scholarship, so I gladly accepted Sergei's invitations to the circus, zoo, or for ice cream at a cafe. I believed that he would eventually propose to me, and we would get married. I wanted to hold on to him tightly and never let go. The life I had before him was something I wanted to leave behind. When he invited me to his cottage one evening, I eagerly accepted. Even when he began pressuring me, I didn't refuse. I was certain that this would further bind generous and beloved Sergei to me. Our visits to the cottage became more frequent, and I was convinced that a marriage proposal was imminent. However, instead of that news, I received another revelation. I was pregnant. I informed Sergei, expecting him to be thrilled. His reaction surprised me. He was happy, but he didn't mention anything about marriage. I couldn't fathom how a man could be so joyous without considering a formal commitment. I decided it was time to broach the subject during one of our stays at the cottage, which Sergei claimed was beneficial for the baby. "Sergei, maybe it's time for us to get married," I asked confidently but gently. "What do you mean, get married?" Sergei inquired with surprise. "To the registry office," I continued assertively. "Soon, my belly will start showing, and I won't be able to go to my parents' place without them finding out that I'm unmarried. You can imagine the consequences, so let's get married." "Did I ever promise to marry you?" Sergei responded calmly. "No," I answered, feeling confused. "But if I never promised, then I won't marry you," Sergei declared matter-of-factly. "So it's fair. Besides, I'm already married." "But what about the child? What about me?" I started crying. "What about you?" Sergei continued in the same calm tone. "You're young and healthy. You can continue your studies at the institute and live here at the cottage in the fresh air. Nobody knows you here, so there won't be any rumors. I'll provide you with food and everything you need regularly. After you have the baby, you can complete your studies and return home." "But," I sobbed. "You mean the baby?" Sergei continued confidently and calmly. "Don't worry about the child. My wife and I will take care of them. We can't have children, maybe because my wife is much older, or maybe there's something wrong. So you don't need to worry about the child. You can sign a refusal, and as the father, I'll take custody." It was 1969, too late for an abortion. I had no choice but to proceed with the pregnancy and accept all of Sergei's proposals, to live at the country house and sign the refusal. What else could I do? I gave birth to a healthy daughter and gathered the strength to sign the refusal. I finished my studies, stayed in the city, found a job, and secured a room. I consoled myself with the thought that my daughter would have a good life in a wealthy family. I believed that I hadn't ruined my life or brought shame upon myself, and I provided my child with a decent life. Sergei, after the birth of my daughter, left with his wife, leaving money behind and extracting my promise that I wouldn't look for him or our daughter. I didn't even know her name, and now she sits across from me, afraid to utter a word. I don't know if she's judging me or trying to understand. So what do you want? I asked Katya, looking her directly in the eyes. My father, before he became seriously ill, told me that I had a mother. Katya began timidly. He made me promise not to search for you as long as he was alive. Towards the end, he regretted that decision, although I think he always regretted it. He shared what he could about you. He said he stopped following you when you became a master. To him, it meant that things were going well in your life. Yeah, things couldn't be better, I replied with a slight sneer. So what is it that you want? I wanted to see, Katya answered just as tentatively. Maybe you'd be interested to know some things. What is there to see in me? I asked in surprise. I'm just a woman. I'm about to turn 70. I've already lived my entire life. Or do you expect me to apologize? Can I come to see you again? Katya interrupted me. You probably need time. I understand. I understand everything. I didn't even go to the door to see them off. Vasya was tending to them. Then, my normally calm and gentle husband started talking to me. He wanted to know why I hadn't told him about my daughter when I knew. He questioned why I had greeted her so coldly. And most importantly, why I hadn't apologized. But why should I apologize? That she grew up in a loving family? If I had acted differently, who knows what would have happened to her? For years, I convinced myself that I had no past. I can't say I'm sorry. I can't, and I don't want to. I have nothing to apologize for. Katya and her family live in another city, but she did visit a few more times. However, the atmosphere during those meetings was the same as the first one. She brought photos showing me my great-grandchildren and her husband. She even showed me pictures. So, I decided to move to the dacha. I'll stay here as long as the weather is warm, and by winter, we'll see what happens. Maybe the situation will resolve itself somehow. And if not, perhaps I'll reach out to one of my sons. Although, you see, none of my relatives even came to my anniversary despite my invitations, including my sons. They took my father's side and condemned him too. But their condemnation isn't for abandoning my daughter. It's because I haven't apologized. That's how I've lived my life, Petrovich. Vera turned to me as she finished her story. I thought I was building happiness, shielding myself from the past, but it turned out to be a fragile illusion. Well, it's never too late to make changes, I said confidently. Why should I? Vera asked in surprise. It's those who are unsatisfied who should change, and I have no regrets. I've lived my life on my own terms and owe nothing to anyone. If few people came to my anniversary, it's their loss. There's an abundance of delicacies on the table. Let them wish they had enjoyed it. While Vera was confessing to Toma and me, I realized that this was the real face of a woman who had lived 70 years. But as soon as she finished sharing everything, her usual mask returned, if I may say so. She reverted back to the Vera my wife, and I had known for so many years. She even managed to put a smile on her face. Now I understand that it was a duty smile, not a genuine one of happiness. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. It seems to me that those who know how to forgive themselves can sincerely seek forgiveness from others. They stand in front of the mirror, looking into their own eyes, fully aware of their sins, knowing themselves like no one else. And if they can't forgive themselves, how can they ask for forgiveness from others? They can't. There may be 1,000 excuses in their minds, blaming others for their actions, but in reality, it's never too late to forgive oneself and offer apologies to others. Isn't that true?